hello. And it's pretty exciting to be back again. Third time for these webinars on how to create a roadmap to mastering midlife. So I'm pretty excited to have you join me tonight. As I've said in the chat, just as you log in, I'd love you to just let me know where you are in Australia, New Zealand, or any other part of the world that you're joining in from. Just put it in, it'd be really cool to know. And as I bring the slides up, I'm also really keen for you to write down, before I even start speaking, what was the thing that got you to even click on the link to register for this webinar? What was it about my roadmap to mastering midlife that got you curious, got you wondering? I'm keen for you to know that, so that as you listen to what I've got to share, you can check in with how that marries up with what you were curious about. I mean, is my information useful for you? And if it is, like, check what the takeaways are, because that's what this whole exercise is about. Sharing my insights, my framework, and lots of other things that I can hopefully help you to be able to master midlife. And at the very least, start gliding through it. Okay, so I'm just going to share some slides, checking everything's recording. Yep. Here we go. Yep, that should be coming up. So I am just let me know if you can't hear me, if you can't see me. Yeah, just keep me posted what's going on. That'd be always great, just in the chat. Okay, so this presentation, as I said, is about my roadmap to mastering midlife. And I definitely speak from knowledge. You'll hear a little bit more about that with there. But when I was thinking about why is it even useful for me to be sharing what my roadmap is, I really do believe that the key piece to this is that I can help midlife women start to glide through midlife rather than grinding. And I know from my own personal experience that was not my journey even 12 months ago. I have been working on learning to glide probably the last 5 years. So yes, I do come from a background of experience personally as well as professionally, but you'll see a little bit about that in a minute. Okay, so who am I? I'm Bella Reynolds. I'm a life coach. I have been a life coach formally since 2018. That's when I got my formal qualifications. In all of the businesses that I've owned, any of my previous staff will probably tell you that I have always had a bent to coach anyone that was in my orbit, particularly professionally. And it was interesting. My son actually admitted to us last weekend when we had an engagement party for him. He believes he was my first client. So that's really quite sweet. I think, to be fair, I have come into the world to be able to help people to learn the tools to navigate life better than they ever imagined possible. And I'm pretty grateful I've come into this world, or I'm actually doing all this in an era where I think we're looking and needing this more than ever. I also would describe myself as a gliding midlifer. I'm going to share more about what that means in a moment. Like most of you women who have chosen to come on tonight, I am also multiple other roles. I am a wife, I am a mum, I am a daughter, I am a sister. I've got multiple, I am a friend. And like all of us, we accumulate all these roles in our life. And it's only when we start to write them all down can we actually start to get a little bit of perspective why coming into midlife can be at best slightly challenging, but at worst a bit overwhelming, because we've accumulated all these roles up to a certain stage in our life, sort of in your 40s and 50s, and then we have a whole piece of biology that starts to reshape us, reinvent us. And I think we're coming to a stage where, personally, I think we're forced to actually reevaluate our life, our roles, what we want out of life. I'm going to share a little bit more about that. I also come to you as what I'll call a serial entrepreneur. I have had 4 key businesses. I have worked in numerous other businesses. The businesses that I have owned myself, I have created every single one of them from scratch. And here I am at 55 years of age, and I'm having another run as an entrepreneur. So for those of you who've come onto the call and onto the webinar, and it could be your area of life with careers or in your professional world that you are looking to glide through midlife, I can promise you there's not much I haven't experienced, attempted, and particularly in the reinvention space. The other piece is that I am also a passionate investor. And I bring this into the piece too, because in the area of financial health and wellness, which is an area I've worked a lot personally and professionally, I do come across a lot of women that the reason that they are grinding through midlife is that their financial health has actually been challenged. And it may have been through sequences of choices that they have made in their earlier years. But by the time they've hit midlife, they are feeling incredibly stuck, lost, and hopeless. So it is an area of passion for me. I do not ever give financial advice. I'm not trained to give financial advice, but I do want to put it out there that I am very familiar with coming into midlife and grinding away at it, mainly because the financial picture was not where I hoped it would be. So if that's you, know that I see you, I hear you, and I can promise you my journey has been out of that. Okay, so as I said, a gliding midlifer. So my definition of a gliding midlifer is any woman, it can be men as well, but any woman in my particular circumstance today who can make any change in their life because they have mastered their own biology. And I'll also add to that that they've cleaned up their crap, because often the reason that their biology is tripping them up is the fact that there is a heap of crap that has not been dealt with as well. I'm going to share more about that. But what do I mean about mastering their biology? You will all be very, very familiar with the menopausal picture or the perimenopausal picture, which is the most common biology that we talk about. So there's major declines in our estrogen, also progesterone and even testosterone. And so those biochemical changes bring on some real challenges to us physically. They also bring on challenges emotionally and mentally. And one of the most obvious ones to bring up is around our sleep. But all of that piece on the physical that leads into our emotional has a major impact on every other part of our life. And so when we talk about menopause and perimenopause and midlife change and all of that sort of stuff, if we are only talking about that part of our biology, then I think we're missing the point. And the reason I talk about mastering it is you can't change what's happening with, well, it's not entirely true, actually. You can't stop the decline physically that happens. And to be brutally honest, I don't want to stop it. I don't want to help anyone to stop it. But when I talk about mastering their biology, it's first accepting what's going on and understanding what's going on, and then starting to make choices around that biology that serve you for where you are. And I've found personally and professionally that when women learn to master that piece of their biology, they master lots of other parts of their biology, such as their stress response, their relaxation response, their emotional management. So it's not just the perimenopausal and menopausal physiology that I'm talking about. It's the implications through the rest of your biology that get missed. And to be brutally honest, if you have got to midlife and you have not managed to master your biology, then I think that you will be struggling because your biology will be mastering you. And again, it's not just your menopausal biology, it is the rest of your biology. So I talk about gliding versus grinding. And what I mean by that is a grinding midlifer is someone like the old me who had so many habits and tips and tricks that I was using unconsciously to get me through my day. And I literally had to almost trudge through it to get there. Sadly, that was the only way I knew. I was forced by this beautiful part and change in my life that I had to find a way to work smarter and not so much harder. There was no one that could outwork me. Seriously, that was my belief system too. And I thought that that would help me get through midlife because it helped me get through everything else. I deferred any thoughts of HRT or hormone replacement therapy, all of that stuff, because I was just going to get through midlife. When I shifted my perspective that I definitely was going to embrace midlife and bring it to what I needed it to be, and then actually change my beliefs around it and a whole stack of other tools that I've brought in, I was able to start to really start to glide. And day to day, I can promise you, I glide. I don't glide perfectly, but no human does. That's the part of being human. So if this is something of interest to you, I want you to consider how much of midlife have you been grinding away at it? How much of it have you been just seriously just doing what you've always been doing? Could you even comprehend that you could embrace this midlife picture and start to glide? Well, I'm hopefully going to share. Well, I'm going to hopefully help you to see that that's possible. Okay, so what we're going to cover tonight is what is midlife? What's my definition of midlife and how do you master it? We're also going to cover all about biology. So I've given you some little insights to this. But as I said before, it's not just about the menopausal picture or even the perimenopausal picture, which is about the only thing we get a lot of airplay in, the symptoms of that. We're also going to talk about, what I'm going to talk about is what can be holding you back from mastering this chapter. Because once you actually understand what is holding you back, you can gather some awareness to start to move forward. And what can you do about it? That's the big question, right? What can you do about it? So does this at all sound like you? You're feeling lost and unsure of what might be next for you. You feel like you're treading water or just existing. You have a niggling sense of time being more precious. You would really love to find some help, but you're not sure what help you even need. You don't even know where to turn. You're actually worried about wasting time. In fact, more than ever in your life, you are conscious about time being precious, and you really have this horrible sense that you're wasting time. Well, all of these are the pieces and pictures of women that I spoke to who were grinding through midlife. And it was these illuminating conversations I had, which got me to develop this whole part of my business. And the thing that I really want, if this is you, and it's going to sound weird and it's probably going to sound a little bit life coachy, I want you to see that this is probably the greatest gift you could probably have. And the reason I say that is that if you are feeling this way, then I think it's a good sign. It means that you have actually come to this point in your life and you actually want to be more or have more or do more, and you're just simply stuck looking for answers. There is actually nothing wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with the fact that you want more. The challenge is that you probably don't know how to address it, and you don't realize that it's not about wanting more, it's about becoming more. It's becoming someone different. And that's exactly what this roadmap that I've created is, to help people. And it's also, this is so common in midlife. We can go through our 20s and our 30s and our 40s, probably not get to the end of our 40s, but certainly start our 40s and sort of really skate through without a lot of questioning. But when we get to our midlife, which I believe captures between the ages of 45 and 65, we have so much going on. In our internal world, the symptoms of perimenopause and even for menopause, but they start to come on, and that's the physical symptoms. But then there's a resulting mental and emotional roller coaster that we go on, and spiritual. What do I mean by spiritual? It is not uncommon as you go through sort of hitting in, starting your 40s and then going beyond, that we have what we call a bit of an existential crisis. But what am I here for? I believe I definitely had one in my 30s, but not to the level of my 40s, and certainly nowhere near the level of my 50s. So it's almost this cumulative elements that are going on where we start to really question while the physiology is going on. We're questioning the emotional and the mental. But layer that up, because now with the world that we live in, we have the external challenges that midlife brings. It's very common to still be educating and rearing dependent children in your 40s, 50s, hopefully not too much into your 60s, but who knows. But navigating that piece of your life while at the other end you have aging parents. You also could have the grown up children. And as I've always said, little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems. So you're navigating all that. You're navigating the highest probability of divorce, which is very, very common as the children leave home and the two adults start to look at each other and go, wow, do I want to spend the rest of my life with you? And then let's add the layer of career. It is one of the most beautiful times in our career if we have the chance to look at it, because we have accumulated, particularly if we'd stayed working through our child rearing, if we have had children, we've accumulated decades of knowledge and experience, and we sort of feel we're coming well into our power. But the overlaying challenge is that because as a society we don't deem to see that as the case, I have a lot of women I work with who feel that they're being almost at this beautifully rich experiential time, they feel superseded because they've come into this midlife, and because they look at themselves with an ageist framework, they can't even see the value that they bring. And, you know, if that's compounded with a cultural shift or working in an organization that has a culture that does not support women in late 40s, 50s and 60s, then these are another layer. Probably one of the other things that I think complicates this phase is that we've also got to this point in our life and we have more choices than ever before. We have more choices simply through the lifestyles that we've started. You know, we can work from home or we can work in the business, in the office. COVID has definitely changed that workplace flexibility. We could stay working in the career with which we've currently got, or the different phase of the career, or we could take that experience and move it into a whole different industry if we wanted it. We may be at a point financially where we actually don't need to work financially, but we would like to keep working. So the whole dynamic changes about how we want to work and where we want to work and work full-time or part-time. So it is a time in our life, I believe, which is incredibly rich. And without seeing the richness of it, it can be incredibly overwhelming. And if you haven't taken time to even assess about this time in your life, then I hope this webinar is the very least you get out of it. Because I'm hoping it will start to help you to see some of the weight behind what's going on in midlife and start to become aware, but also acknowledge why you're feeling some of the weight around it. So I would actually say at this point, it's no wonder that you're in overwhelm. If you are in overwhelm, or if you're on the fringes of overwhelm, then I would say you're very, very normal. And the other complicating factor that I see here is that this is a stage in our life that unless we have set up networks to talk specifically about this, then I find a lot of our networks are just simply too busy to talk about it. They're too busy getting on and doing and grinding and messing around with that to create space and have conversations around how they're managing, how they're working, what they're doing. You know, if you're lucky enough to have children and made that choice, and we would sit around in mothers groups and we would sit in that space and we would share with other women who are going through similar experiences. Just simply that practice, I know personally, helped me to navigate early parenthood so much easier. Well, where are those networks? Where are those conversations? Where are those circles that we are providing for women to have these conversations? Is this something you've been addressing? And if you have, well done, throw it into the chat. Because if you have, you're quite unusual. The women I've come across in my own experiences, it almost hit me out of left field that I was in the thick of midlife and I was overwhelmed and I was feeling lost and I was questioning constantly, but I was also way too busy to stop and really, really analyze it. So just think about where you're at, and if there's nothing else out of tonight, I'm hoping what it gives you is a sense of peace, that the overwhelm you may be feeling is warranted. And it's only when we're aware of how we're feeling or aware of anything that's going on, can we actually start to address things. We can never address anything we're not aware of. That's a fairly simple rule. Okay, this is just another piece of information. I know there's a lot of words here, but I find it really valuable to share this. And the reason is that it comes from one of my top neuroscientist gurus, Dr. Sarah Mackay. And she has spent, well, certainly the last couple of decades researching the women's brain. And there's a fabulous book that I have read front to back about navigating our mind and our brain through our whole life. But this statement is something that I want you to consider on top of everything I've just said. Neuroplasticity is the ability of the adult brain to be sculpted and changed in response to experiences. Young brains do this with ease. Older brains are able to change, but it is harder unless the conditions are just right. So just think about that. All through growing up, and this is why it's so vital with our children that we give them as many experiences as we can. All those experiences sculpt and change our minds and our brains. That's plasticity. But we now know that it is harder for an older brain. Plasticity occurs when the essential human needs of attention, positive stress, and connection are met. So think back to those networks I just spoke about. Plasticity occurs when we have attention, positive stress, and connection. If you are not having attention, positive stress, and connection with other women in this field, then you are missing out. You are going to be struggling to manage with your neuroplasticity. Older adults need warm human connections. So think about this throughout. What is one thing you do to help you to master midlife? Start increasing those warm human connections. This is also something that I want you to be aware of. It is unusual. The last time any of us went through such a physical, emotional, mental, spiritual time was when we went through puberty. And if you're anything like me, I can't remember puberty. There's the odd little glimpse, but it was, I seem to have just got through it. And then we got on with the rest of our life. But it is an unusual time. It is the reverse puberty. And because it is unusual, it is also unfamiliar. And one of the responses of our brain when something is unfamiliar and stressful is that it brings on our stress response. And our brains and minds are designed entirely to keep us safe. So when we have something that's unusual and it's unfamiliar and it brings on a stress response, then unless we know another way to manage it, unless we know how to bring on our relaxation response, there will be a heightened sense of anxiety around what's going on. because that's just how we're formed. That's how I was going to say how we're wired, but it's another language these days. It's how we're made. So I find that this is a part of our biology that also complicates what's going on. There's also this piece, which is a real reason that I got very heavily into a habit mindset coaching, or in my mindset coaching, helping people with habits. And that's very much around this whole process with regard to habits sit in our impulsive mind, our basal ganglia in our automatic. So habits sit there and they conserve our energy and they're all fabulous until they're not. So if you have got to midlife and you are on autopilot solely, which can be up to 95% of your actions, and you don't even know how to bring in your reflective mind, then your automatic response to midlife and all of the overwhelm will be like that. It will automatically be that way. You won't even know how to bring in your reflective mind. You won't even know how to bring in your conscious and your deliberate and your executive function, so that you can actually start to look at midlife in a different way. You will be in such autopilot that you will automatically be responding to midlife in that manner. This is a problem. And this is why it's fundamental with the roadmap to mastering midlife that I've created, is that anyone I coach knows how to manage and deal with their habits. Because breaking habits and creating new habits is actually quite simple. I'm not going to say easy. It's quite simple when you know how. But if you don't know how, it's because you haven't learned it, because you don't learn this at school and you don't learn it in other areas. So this is part of why I believe life coaching is just so valuable. Simple and effective tools like managing and creating habits, I think is fundamental to actually having a healthy and happier life across our life, and absolutely definitely through midlife. Do you have any idea how to make a habit? Do you know how? Do you even know how automatic you are on? How many times in a day do you consciously choose to reflect? So the emotional habit loop, this is another reason that I do the habit loop, because there are 3 elements to the habit loop. There is the trigger, there's the subsequent routine, and then there's a reward. So if we think about the trigger, let's bring an example that's very simple, very common, the habit of having a wine at the end of the day. So the trigger, funnily enough, after you've established this as a true habit, the trigger is actually walking through the door and seeing your fridge. It's not what it was to begin with, but that's what it generally becomes. Then there's the routine, dumping the handbag, going to the fridge, going to the cupboard, getting out the wine glass, pouring the glass, having that first sip and just relaxing into it. Now, what's a reward? Well, when you first started that habit, the initial reward would have literally been a wind down. There would also be a whole raft of other rewards associated with this. It may actually now be a reflection time, not consciously, but time for you to process your day. It may be a reward to actually help you to get through the rest of your night, because you still have children you've got to feed, or a husband you've got to communicate with, or aged parents you've got to deal with. So this is the habit loop. But what is really interesting is that's the simple habit loop, but I'm putting this emotional habit loop up for you now, because it's the emotional habit loops that I find trick us up even worse in midlife. And it's also emotional habit loops strip us up full step. And the reason is, if your wine drinking after work behavior or routine does not serve you, it is an emotional habit loop. And the reason is because after you've had that wine, you don't get a real satisfied end. You are looking for something else. So the emotion could be fatigue, the emotion could be worry, the emotion could be anger, frustration. And so you've come through the door, you've got the glass of wine, you've got that initial, but you're still frustrated, angry, disappointed, whatever. And so that's generally have the second, third, and fourth wine, or you won't even be aware of it. And so the problem is that you get into these habits that you think are satisfying the need you're looking for, and they're not. And that is what a true emotional habit loop is. And once again, working with clients in midlife, our emotional habit loops can be what can really, really trick us up. And if we don't know this stuff, we don't know any better. So what are the emotions that you feel at the moment just in being in midlife? What are the habits or what are the routines you've got into using to get you through, as I say, grinding rather than gliding? So this is a classic example. Not necessarily, High Performing Jane was not a client that it was related directly to having the alcohol at the end of the night. But Jane is, I will definitely class her now as a gliding midlifer. But when she came to work with me, she was absolutely grinding through midlife. And unbeknownst to her, there were a lot of habits, particularly thought-based habits, around seeing herself as in the workplace being superseded. She had spent up until her mid-40s, actually up until her early 50s, she had spent all of that time really climbing the corporate ladder. She got to a point in her career where the financial necessities to work with dependent children, to provide for them had diminished a bit, but she still wanted to earn a good income. She still wanted to contribute with her husband. And most of all, she wanted to contribute on her terms. So she could start to see that she had this incredible experience that she could offer, but she wanted to shift herself out of the corporate world and go into consulting. And a whole raft of beliefs and how she thought, they all were just actually sabotaging this move for her. She also had the biology that was sabotaging her, where her sleep had been so dramatically affected coming into perimenopause and menopause that she was not actually even able to think straight. She had a lot of weight gain that was really creating emotional habit loops for her as well, because she was still identifying as her pre-midlife Jane. So she just had a whole heap of crap, so to speak, that was mastering her rather than her mastering it. So when we started to work together, I just show this as an example. I've got a couple of examples through my Prezzo, is that when I start working with someone, and this is how the roadmap has been developed, is the first thing we have to look at is a new mindset that she needed. And Jane needed to absolutely change her mindset to go into consulting. She couldn't see herself in the corporate mindset any longer because it wasn't going to serve her. The key areas that she had to start to get very clever about is her being focused, being financially free, and also being high performing. So the tools that I was able to give Jane was, over the period of time we worked together, was to be able to repeat those I ams every single day in a process where she was able to work into getting herself into state every morning before she would actually get into the office. The other thing was that because Jane had been so focused on weight loss in her old world, which was CrossFit, and she didn't want to go back into those practices, but because she didn't know any better, and she also hadn't given herself permission to look at doing different ways of moving her body to help her with weight loss and managing the weight gain of midlife, she wasn't even thinking of practices like morning walking, which she loved. Didn't just love it for her moving her body, but loved it so that she could use that as reflection time, planning her day, getting her thoughts in mind, helping with her sleep. So we brought that in as part of her toolkit as well. Now, this was all done over a series of months, and this is Jane I worked with in a one-on-one. The other really simple habit that we brought in that I know is still part of her tools today is that we actually set up every single morning. She would create, every single Monday, for example, she would set up a tick sheet of all the contacts that she would start to create that week so that she could build her consulting business. And I was able to help her to stay accountable for that because that's part of my job as a coach. So what I wanted to share with this is the epiphany that Jane had to come to. And so this is really important with anyone I work with in the midlife space, is generally an epiphany is on the way. That's what all the questioning, that's what all the challenging is about, right? But you often need someone to support you to come to that epiphany. Once Jane recognized this epiphany, that she did not want to help other businesses make their businesses great any longer, it was time for her to make a great business for herself. Everything else shifted. So Jane was able to start to glide through midlife when she started to own what it was she wanted midlife to give her. When she realized that she wanted to own what the whole of the midlife world and the richness of everything that was behind it could give her. So when I work with clients on this, a big part of it is spending time to help them to own their story to today. Because if you can't own the story that you've got to now, everything that's got you to midlife, I find it's very, very difficult for anyone to move forward. If you've managed to find a way to own your story all through all your decades, you're probably gliding through midlife anyway. But this webinar is really important to help those people who are feeling stuck because they're grinding through midlife and they don't even know that language about it, let alone that's what's happening. There's a stuckness, there's an overwhelm. They want better, they want to be better, do better, have more, but they don't realize that it's because they're using outdated operating systems and they don't even know what it is they need. So that's what it was really cool to be able to help Jane work with. Okay, so I hope what it demonstrates with Jane's example there, and also, part of this roadmap is really, write this down. If this is the only thing you get out of the session, this is the domino effect as a human. Our actions that we take every single day are not simply actions that happen by default. Our actions are the result of how we feel and, more importantly, about how we think. Because how we think leads to how we feel and then how we act. And that is the truth. What is really interesting is that most of us spend our whole time wanting to change how we act. And yet we haven't even worked out how to feel differently, let alone how to think differently. So when I work with clients, and particularly in the midlife space, the most fundamental shifts that occur for anyone in midlife is when they learn to think differently. They learn to understand what current beliefs they have that may be sabotaging them on their road to midlife or right in the thick of it. Because it's only once we've understood what our beliefs and our thinking is, will we feel differently and will we act differently? So what's an example I can give to you this? If you are acting like someone that this midlife crisis, or that's not even the language, this midlife overwhelm, if you are acting as if you should not be feeling this way, you really should just get over yourself, then I would guarantee you that you are feeling that way because you think that this midlife world is a first world problem and you simply should not be being indulgent toward it. That has been my experience. So if you think that midlife is something that you should just get through, then when you're not getting through it, you are going to feel very uncomfortable and your actions are more than likely going to be inaction. Because humans do not act unless they feel comfortable and safe to act. So if you're not feeling comfortable and safe to act, it's because you're not thinking that it's safe and comfortable to act. I don't know if that's confused anyone, but what this is about is just showing you the domino effect. Oh, it's lovely to see. I've got a South Australian online, which is awesome. So how we think dictates how we feel, and how we think and feel dictates how we act. Just think about that with your midlife journey so far. This is ramming home the point. Your beliefs will have the greatest impact on your ability to master midlife. So when I talk in this webinar about a roadmap to mastering midlife, it's basically a roadmap that can help you to change your beliefs, which will then change how you feel and change how you act. That is the fundamental piece for my clients. So, something for you to consider. How did the influential women in your life navigate their midlife? If you were lucky enough to have women in your life that even talked about their midlife, maybe not as they were navigating it, but certainly in the last, they may be in their 70s or 80s and they're willing to even talk about it, they can even share what it was like, then that is, and they are willing to talk about it, that is at least one step up from a lot of people I work with. The vast majority of people I work with who are stuck in midlife never had the opportunity to watch from another gliding midlifer. Often, and look, I'm 55, so back when my mum was, navigating midlife, it would absolutely have been a time of harden up, get on with it. I mean, there wasn't even the opportunity. I mean, HRT would have been barely available. There would have been all the scary research if it was available. So it was a time where women were meant to be, we were in a different position in our relationships as well. And certainly in the workplace, oh my goodness. If you, I can take you back to the 50s. They put women into mental health facilities. They called it menopausal madness. They were male doctors, by the way. But it's how we watch the influential women in our life navigate will actually give you some clues if you are struggling in midlife. So how a lot of our beliefs have come from those people in our life too. So just think about if you are feeling a bit of overwhelm or you are feeling stuck, that is a really big clue to why that might be the case. Now, that doesn't mean you go back and you berate them for what that happened. It's got nothing to do with it. It's just helping you to gather some understanding. And when we get understanding and awareness, then we can move forward. So the other piece to this is it may not have just been your family. It could have been watching even bigger sisters. How did they navigate it? Now, if you've watched older women navigate midlife really well and embrace midlife for all the richness that it is, then I'm pretty confident your belief systems, your feelings, your thinking, and your actions around it will be a lot less tentative. You will embrace it with much more gusto. Okay. This is another piece that I'm going to now give you full permission to feel, because once again, I don't believe as a society we give us, let alone in midlife, but at any point in our life, it is actually not really easy to know what you want. So if you've come to midlife and you've got a beautiful time available to you where you could choose to do anything you wanted because you don't have the major financial problems, you've been clever with your investing and you actually know that you don't need to work but you'd like to work, for example. If you've come to that and you are struggling because you don't know what you want, well, I'm going to take you back to your childhood. And the reason I'm going to take you back there is that I think it's very uncommon to come across people who, when they were being reared and had childhood, they were asked very early on, particularly those in their 40s and 50s now, what did you want? More often than not, as a child, as you were starting to navigate childhood and you were saying, oh, I want this and I want that, more often than not, we were shut down. It's not all about what you want. No, you don't always get to get what you want. Absolutely. I know I've been watching the beautiful parenting that's gone on in the last 10 to 15 years and it has changed dramatically. But for those of us navigating midlife now, so between 45 and 65 now, we've got the old parenting. So when we come into adulthood, and particularly in our 40s and 50s, and people say, oh, but what do you want? And you say, I don't know, that's okay. And the reason it's okay is because you've been trained and conditioned to not know what you want because it got taken away from you. Now, this could be simply oversimplifying it for some of you. And I don't mean to do that, but I have had that much experience with clients that one of the big sticking points about moving forward is they don't know what they want. And they also feel because they don't know what they want that there's something wrong with them. I'm here to tell you, and great to see that's coming through. It is nothing wrong with you. You are a product of your environment. So just relax into it, own it, give yourself permission that that's what you're feeling. Because once you give yourself permission to feel that way, you take a lot of the stress out of it. And then you can start to move forward on this. Because anyway, I'm coming into why. This is also a problem about not knowing what you want. And it's because we live in an age of so much choice. And this is a book, a very powerful book called The Paradox of Choice. And in it, Barry Schwartz says, learning to choose is hard. And that's because of that background I've just said. Learning to choose well is harder. And learning to choose well in a world of unlimited possibilities is harder still. Perhaps it's too hard. So think about that for where you're at. If you've got to midlife and you're gliding a little bit, but you're grinding still a fair bit because the biggest problem for you is I don't know what you want. Well, I want you from this moment forward to just relax into that, and that's okay. And two reasons for that is possibly conditioning and also the fact that there is so much available to us. So we know with humans, when we have too much choice, we don't choose. We enact. We do nothing. So how do we move around that? Well, with the Mastering Midlife world that I work with clients, first you acknowledge it, that that's what you're feeling, and we start to narrow down what the choices are, but we do it in such a manner that it still is about what lights you up. So it's almost retraining you to work out what you want, and we do it in bite-sized little pieces. You don't go from someone who doesn't know what they want to someone absolutely knowing what she wants. You don't do that jump overnight. Probably taken 40 years to get to this, right? And understanding it. But what we can do is every single day. You know, one of the simplest tactics I work with clients with, if they don't know what they want, we get them to start working out one meal a day where they choose a food intuitively. That may sound so simplistic to you, but I can promise you when you start to work out what you want intuitively to eat once a day, you will speed up what you want. You can try it in any other part of your life. If you want to choose intuitively what you want to watch on television or to watch on a screen or who to ring or just doing something little and simple, and micro habits is where I start with anyone. That gets us to shift the needle quicker. Okay, it may not seem that way because it's starting so small, but I promise you it's little by little, step by step. So this is another piece into why it can be hard to know what you want. As I said before, there's this also over-pervading indulgence theme that I come across, all the conversations I've had with women about this. And, you know, this statement came out, this is such a first world problem. And I'm going to say, yep, it is. It is a first world problem. How lucky are we that we are living in a world that this is one of our problems? We're not dodging bombs in the Ukraine. We're not trying to work out how to feed our children in the back streets of Indonesia, but it is our problem. You do not have to feel guilty and indulgent about it. Worrying about other people's problems and deferring yours is one of the most useless activities anyone could do, let alone a woman in midlife. Let alone a woman in midlife who actually can instinctively see and feel that she wants more. But one of the things that's holding her back is feeling guilty that she wants more because she really should be just happy with what she's got. I call bullshit. Okay? If you're feeling that the feelings you've got around going on here is indulgent and that you're feeling guilty about it, stop it. As at the beginning of the webinar when I was talking about emotional habit loops, that can be one of the biggest things that stop you from acting, because every time it brings up an emotion around guilt, and then you just simply paralyze yourself to act. Oh, I couldn't possibly. Oh, it's not that big a deal. Oh, such a first world problem. I should just harden up and just move through this. No. Honor it. Honor the fact that you've hit midlife, you've got to this phase. The fact that you've even said you're going to come on this webinar shows that they've got inklings and insights that you want more, you want to be more, you want to do more. Just honor it. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. You simply, as I said before, it's not the fact that you have got these inklings that's the problem. The problem is you don't know what to do about them. And because you don't know what to do about them, you're probably going round and round and round in circles. And this is a big thing that I am a firm believer. Living your life's purpose is valuable to your well-being. Honoring those inklings that you want to be more, do more, or have more is one of the most amazing things you can do for your well-being, okay? It will improve your emotional well-being. It will improve your physical well-being. It will improve all of the things around your life. And most importantly, it will improve the life of those around you, particularly if you have your own family, but even if you don't. You are part of a family network of some description, and you'll be in a workplace as well. And when women in midlife are feeling down and out on themselves, I can tell you their well-being is going down the tube as well. So it is, I believe you need to honor it. I think it's one of the most exciting things, but it only becomes exciting when we see it as exciting. So I just get you to ask, what are the limiting beliefs that could be holding you back? These are just a little selection that I come across. Who am I to want this? It's indulgent to think about this. I haven't got enough time. I'm too young or I'm too old. So you could be in your 40s and going, oh, but I'm not right in midlife yet. And I've still got all these kids and I've still got all this, dependencies. So why would I go and change? Just cut it. I'm not smart enough. I don't have enough time to do something new. That often comes up, particularly with my 60s. I coach up to 75-year-olds at the moment. And it's really interesting, some of the beliefs that we can keep holding on to, and yet we wake up every morning and you could be 80 years of age and still questioning this stuff. It is a life half lived. And that's what those beliefs do, right? You have this inkling that you want to do something about it, something excites you, or someone tells you something exciting they're doing, and you've probably started to be maybe a bit of an empty nester, or you've just all of a sudden come into this midlife stage and you've got more time available to you, hopefully, or you've just recognized now that this is possible. But then you start acting toward it, and then you hit a glass ceiling. You act toward it and hit a glass ceiling. This is often with a weight loss journey. And I'm not going to be that person anymore. I'm going to eat this way, and I'm going to eat this way, and that's Monday, Tuesday, and by Thursday, yep, you're, sorting yourself out for your third takeaway for the day. So what are these glass ceilings? I work with glass ceilings. That is really what my job is to help a human. Instead of looking through that glass ceiling and seeing what they want, I help them to actually find the door and go through it. And if your glass ceiling at midlife is all of those beliefs that are holding you back, and you find yourself paralyzed to act, or you start moving and you don't actually complete it, it's because you don't realize that what is going on is not about who you need to do differently. It's about becoming a different person. You've literally come to a point in your life that you have to become someone different so that you can actually enjoy the stage you're at. Mastering midlife demands a different you. That's been my experience. It's my client's experience. And you want to know the roadmap? This is the ethos. If you want to master midlife, it demands a different you. You are going to be required to change who you are and how you think. And that goes back to your beliefs. We have to literally start to think differently to be able to feel and do differently. So think about your own circumstance. So I have 4 key areas that I work with my roadmap, and it is not linear. I can come starting work with clients. More often than not, we do start with a real goal, but the other 3 areas that we'll work on is how to master your biology, how to clean up your crap, and how to build a custom toolkit. So they are the 4 keys that I have to what I call leveling up, mastering midlife. And the thing that I love about this framework is that even though we can work on this for a number of months, we will inevitably hit another little stumble. And when you know this framework, you can literally self-assess and go, oh, what's going on here? Is it because I've got a real goal or not really a real goal? Is this my biology that's tricking me up? Do I need something for my toolkit? Or, is this some crap that I've still got going on and I didn't know was there? So the beautiful thing is this framework that I've developed is something that you can use for the rest of your life, and you can use with other people in your life. So a classic example, another example is Nikki. And Nikki was this absolutely beautiful, and today is this absolutely beautiful woman who I worked with. And when Nikki first came to me, she had high levels of anxiety, and she came to me in her work context. But essentially what was going on was that in her private life, she wasn't owning who she was. And in her work environment, she didn't feel like she could either. So Nikki had identified that she basically wanted to be in a same-sex relationship. She loved women. And she had told those nearest to her, but not in the next realm. And she had not told anyone at work. And she worked in a faith-based organization, in a teaching organization as a teacher, but in a faith-based school, where she felt that if she owned publicly who she was, she wouldn't have a job. So she had literally got to a point in her life where that glass ceiling, she was trying to address something that she needed to become someone different. She needed to embrace who she was personally before she could even change how she was working in her work environment. What was really cool was when we started to really look at her mindset, Nikki had always been adventurous. She'd always been brave. She'd always been grounded, but she'd never seen herself as that in her professional persona. So what we had to do was help her navigate in her personal world who she really, 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 really wanted to be, and then help her to navigate and bring that across into a professional world. The 3 key tools that, Nikki's sessions with me were always on a Monday. And she still has that Monday habit, even though we don't coach together anymore. She has that Monday afternoons where she reviews the previous week and looks at it and actually plans anything she needs to do with that habit framework. But also the other thing is, she said fundamental to her change was the ability for her to learn how to pause, reflect, and then respond. And she does that at work and at home. As she recognized, her biggest epiphany was when she worked out that she needed to get herself in state each and every morning. And she needed to do that before work so that she could create her awesome days. And she got more and more and more awesome days. Now, Nikki and I are still in contact. And one of the most beautiful things about Nikki's story is that not only is Nikki now in a absolutely loving, full-blown same-sex relationship, she is also 100% out personally and professionally. She still works in that faith-based organization. When she came out to her colleagues, not one of them said anything to her on a negative. They all loved her for who she was. It was all in her head. But the other piece I love is that because she's got this framework, she's navigating all the little tips and tricks that happen when we finally get what we want out of life, right? It's not like it stops there. We just go up to another level. So she's got this framework to be able to use that. So it's so cool to still be in her space and know her updates. Okay. And then the next and final case study I will share is my own story, because I can only share that just to let you know, if I don't share my stuff, well, then how can I get you to trust me, really? And clients I work with, I can promise you, get to know me quite intimately. So one area in that framework that I really have worked a lot on most recently in my midlife was about money. And as I said earlier on tonight, financial health, our feelings and beliefs and everything around our financial health will have a major, major impact on the rest of our life. And particularly for us in midlife, if we feel that we are underprepared or have underdone to get us to this point, we can really unravel, because we can feel that we've got less time ahead of us than behind us, and how on earth can we make up that ground? For me, in my business world, as I said before, a serial entrepreneur, I understood very recently, well, when I say the last couple of years, that one of my belief system was that I could actually never make enough money. I seemed to be, well, I found out I was on this unbelievable quest constantly to make more and more and more and more money. And what I realized then is that I was never going to make enough. And if I was never going to make enough, I was going to stay on that treadmill of not enough, scarcity mindset, and it was going to continue to undo me at a level faster as I was aging. So my new mindset is, because I cleaned that crap up, and this is my current affirmational mindset, is I am patient, I am focused, and most importantly in my business, I have a shit ton of fun. But the 3 tools that I maintain and I still do today is journaling. I listen to an inspirational story every morning in the shower before I hop into my work persona. And I'm very grateful. Recently, I've moved to my dream location by the beach, and I have a daily morning swim, come summer, winter, whatever. But that actually invigorates me, and most importantly, sets me up my state, but also my relaxation state. And my epiphany is to really understand that everything is always working out for me. That belief, that epiphany that's led to that belief, I can tell you has changed me into, from someone who was a massively scarcity mindset to a fully abundant mindset. Did it happen overnight? No, none of it ever does. But I chipped away at it, and I chipped away at it, as I do to help my clients. And within a couple of weeks, I can absolutely see a change. So I share my case studies just to give you some insights to how that framework can work for you. Okay, so what, if I was listening with you right now, what would be the best starting point right now? What is it? What is it? What is it? If there is nothing else that you do at this point in your midlife journey, I would ask you to sit down, and I do this with clients, is to ask you to sit down and write your story. You can just do it chapter by chapter, your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, whatever age you are, and start to own your story till now. Because I believe that if you've come to midlife and you are grinding rather than gliding, a big piece of that is because you have not owned where you've come from. And I believe that once you start to own that story, you start to see some incredible patterns. You do see some crap that you do need to clean up, but it also gets you to start to honor who you have become. Because once you've actually worked out who you have become, you don't have to do this on a deep, deep, deep level. It's just giving you some insights and awareness. But I know for myself that once I actually was able to honor who I'd become up until midlife, or certainly up until my 50s, early 50s, it helped me embrace what I wanted next. Because I came to that future knowing that I had a richness that I could offer. And it helps you to create your real goals. Because, once we hit midlife, we have accumulated an incredible richness. And no one else is going to share that with you. No one else is going to tell you what it is either. I believe it's your duty. So that is the number one, is to actually sit down and think about where have you come from, and then let that help you to work out what you want. I'm going to ask at this point about cost. And if you've been on my Instagram recently, I've done a really simple little clip about the cost of stuckness. What does it currently cost you to not have a plan that you're excited about and confident in? And as I said today on my Instagram, if you have actually not put a money, a time, a love, or a health cost to staying stuck, then you're going to stay stuck longer. And I talk about marinating and stuckness. If you want to move forward, the best thing to do is start to work out what it's costing you not to move forward. So imagine if you could articulate exactly what you want next stage in life and you had a plan to achieve it. So you could really start to articulate what you want and that you felt every day you had a life of purpose and were contributing to the world. Imagine if you could design a life for yourself that you would never want to retire from. That's absolutely what I've done. I've definitely helped other clients do it too. And as I said before about these warm human connections, imagine if you had a group of like-minded women to support you in this next chapter of your life. Well, if you're ready, I have got a beautiful share about this roadmap that I'm talking about that will help you to get clarity on the next chapter of your life. I have developed and launched, and on Thursday night we'll close the applications for my Gutsy Ladies program. And it's all open and ready. Now, why have I called it Gutsy Ladies? The reason I've called this Gutsy Ladies is because I have recognized in all my interviewing with women in midlife that every single one of them was a gutsy lady and they didn't even know it. Those women I was talking to that were grinding through midlife, they weren't gliding. They had these beautiful gutsy lady stories and they, one, didn't know them, two, because of that, couldn't express them, and three, couldn't live that life that way. So I've called this Gutsy Ladies because I am out there to transform those women who have had a gutful of grinding through life, midlife, and bring them in to be gutsy ladies. So that's why I've called it this. It is an 8-week group coaching program, and it's absolutely designed to give you clarity around your next chapter so that you can live it with courage and fun and confidence. You will come away with a hell of a lot. There'll be friendships for life at the very least, but you will also have your own roadmap so that you can go through that glass ceiling and reach your full potential. You will absolutely get a stack of techniques to help you overcome your limiting beliefs. Through the program, I will live coach, so you will also have those beliefs tested. There are video lessons and exercises and a handbook that's designed to make sure you retain and apply everything you learn. So that's my Gutsy Ladies program is perfect for anyone who is ready to embrace the life you deserve, is actually done apologizing for having big dreams. Remember, it's not indulgent. And it's also if you're ready to start putting things into action instead of lying awake at 3 a.m. thinking, what if? Or worse, commuting to work and dreaming of a life, but you just haven't found a way to act on it. So are you gliding or are you grinding through your midlife? What is included? Okay, so we've got, and Saturdays, as I said, my applications, it's starting to get right down to tin tacks. On Saturday, I have got a 3-hour goal setting. So it's a full-blown workshop that I have specifically designed as a preamble to get the plan in action so that the following 8 Monday nights, you are working through your plan. You also get 2 private 45-minute one-on-one exclusive coaching sessions with me. And that is feedback I've got from clients. They want to have the group, but they want to have particularly the one-on-ones. You can be a lot more intimate, but you can also share some stuff you may not want to share with others at the beginning. You also get 8-hour-long group coaching sessions with like-minded women. As I said, about 45 minutes of each of that hour is live group coach, like live coaching. So you come to that coaching knowing you wanting to get some crap cleaned up, know how to master your biology, get your toolkit sorted. You also get full access to my online course of how to level up to a millionaire mindset. So that's almost $3,000. Private clients, so those case studies that I mentioned to you, when I work one-on-one with private clients for 3 months, it's at $4,200. So I put that in there just to give you insights because I've gone to add this offering of group coaching so that I've got 2 price points for clients. I'm actually doing this first program at $1,997, and I'm doing it specifically so that I can actually get more Gutsy Ladies on and get moving on this so we can get going, because my mission is to create 1,000, basically transform 1,000 Gutsy Ladies. So just some of the questions that I've had asked. Do I have time? Well, I would just flippantly say, of course you do. Yes, but here's the real answer. The time commitments is every Monday night for 1 hour. It's 6 p.m. it's Queensland time. So good old Queensland. I'm based in New South Wales now, but I've done it at that. So it's 6 p.m. there. And so that's every Monday night for 8 Mondays, but it's also that 3-hour workshop this Saturday. Okay. And then you book in your 2 private slots as you can and wish. How do we meet? Everything's done on Zoom. So you get your links once you sign up, and you can log them all in and basically set them in your diary. And you're not going to want to miss these sessions. By the way, they are recorded for the duration. You have the access to those recordings for the duration of the course. And now, is this for women like me? Now, I'm just going to get that link. I can't believe I didn't have this up ready for you. For a discovery call. I'm just going to throw that into the chat so that you can. Oh, where have I got you? Apologies for that. I'm going to put that into the chat because, as I said, this is I'm actually shutting off applications on Thursday night. So I'd really love, if this is something that you want to know more about, if you've jumped on this webinar and you may have missed the front of it and you're at all curious, I really implore you to get on and just book in this discovery call. I've got a heap of vacancies tomorrow and Thursday, so that when I shut it all down Thursday night, I've given everyone the best opportunity to be able to sign up for it. So I'd love you to just book in so that you can actually talk to me, and in the discovery call, you're going to share what it is that you are looking for. If you're grinding through midlife, what's going on for you and how do you want it to look? Because that's the most important thing. And then we'll see if we're a good fit. So I'd really love you to be able to book in on that. You can just click that on the link. Can I do it as a couple? I often get this question. I have done couples coaching in the past, and I won't do it anymore. And the reason is, it is a very, it's a very skilled area. But the other piece is what I've experienced and witnessed is that it is much better for someone to come one-on-one so that we can work, entirely on what you're looking for. Sometimes the couples that I work with don't necessarily want to stay as couples. So by just keeping it focusing on just one individual, we don't muddy the waters. So can't do it as couple. Do I offer payment plans? Absolutely. So it's the 1997 if you want to pay up front and do that. Otherwise, I've got 3 payments for 749. Now that's all available on my link, but I would encourage you to do a discovery call. I mean, if you want to get on now and book and pay, that's great. To be honest, I really want you to book in so that we can have a chat and check that this is the right fit for you. Are there any other questions? That is the one thing with Crowdcast. If there's any other questions you've got, throw them into the chat and I will see if I can answer them. If not, book in that appointment and we will have a chat with that. Okay, so just see if there's any other questions coming in. No, it doesn't look to be. And I've just looked at the time. So I'm actually a little bit over. So my apologies for that. I really hope that you've got something out of, this, the roadmap to mastering midlife that I, as I said, I've developed personally as well as I've shared with numerous clients. I think it is such a powerful framework to help people to move forward. Because the most common thing I come across is a lot of mental rumination and no physical action. And as I said on my Instagram post today, marinating in stuckness has only got one road, okay? And it's just further stuck. You've got to do something different. You've got to reach out there and change it up, and you've just got to start taking action. And so, take some really simple action and book in for a discovery call and just see if I'm the right fit, or see what I can give you on that call that can help you to move forward. Okay, well, hopefully that has been of value, and I've really enjoyed having you on. And I look forward to any feedback. Book on for a call or let me know. I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook. Always looking for any insights, and I hope you go and have a brilliant rest of your evening and start to glide through midlife. You all deserve it.